Hey there, pen fans! Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, back once again with another ink showdown. I've selected 10 dark green inks that I'm gonna be writing out, swabbing them up with, Tomoe River paper. I got 52 gram white paper there. I got a Rowan Cleaner glass pen and a Kakimori stainless steel nib. So those are gonna be my tools for the day. Now I'm taking some feedback from the deep purple, showdown that I did most recently. Got good feedback on it. Thank you for doing that. But so I'm approaching it a different way. It's not necessarily like a ranking of best to worst or anything like that. But when you put these inks, even in a narrow color range next to each other, sometimes you get to see specific properties and nuances of them that you can't if you're just looking at like individual swabs, especially on a computer monitor. So that's what I like. It's kind of an experiment, and it's really curious, even for me, as much experience as I have, to see some of these inks kind of next to each other and the different aspects that come out. So that's kind of what this is about. Less of a ranking best to worst, but more of just like a let's explore this together. Just to give you some parameters here, there's definitely a lot of different greens that can be out there. I tried to stick to a pretty narrow range of dark greens. So anything that leaned really heavy olive, I didn't include. Anything that got like a little too bright, a little too more like a clover kind of a green, I opted out for that. So these are all really, really dark greens. So that's my baseline. That's what I'm going with here. Now I will say that I've left out a few dark green inks out of this list, which technically could be contenders for, darkest, but we've had either stock issues or they're not very popular or whatever. So I tried to, be thoughtful and come up with a list of some of the more popular or readily available dark greens out there, ones that I thought you would probably be most interested in. So these are all ones that I would easily recommend to anyone looking for a color in this range, and I'm sure that you'd enjoy it if you like dark greens. All right, let's jump right into it. Diamine Sherwood Green. All right, this one is maybe a little bit on the lighter side, kind of at the top end of the light range, but it's a very, very popular dark green. So I definitely wanted to include this one. So we'll kick this off first. Very pleasant color, no crazy properties or anything with this one. It's just an all around nice dark green. So I imagine that this will be familiar maybe to a bunch of you, or just, be pleasing. This is a good, very good like work appropriate green ink. So let's give it a shot here. Diamine. Sherwood Green, right? Ooh. Okay, so there it is. These glass pens are gonna go a little heavier than most fountain pen inks would. So you are seeing like a more saturated version of what you would normally see on the page with these greens, and that's okay. Just as long as you know that's kind of what you're going for. If you have a really, really thin or dry, writing pen, it might not look quite as dark, but for a lot of these inks, they're really dark. They're gonna look pretty dark no matter what nib size that you're using. So here we go. So this is a very pleasant green color. I see why this is so popular. This has long been a very popular green color. So, it's gonna darken up a little bit as it dries here, but you can see it's very definitively green, like almost starts out kind of like a Kelly green maybe. Am I getting that right? I don't know if that's got any like yellow to it, maybe not. But it's definitely dark green. It's not like, black with a hint of green. Some of those that I'm gonna show you are gonna be like, you can barely tell it's green because it's so dark. But Sherwood Green is really nice. You can see it's darkening up here already as it dries. So we'll set that one, kind of just here in the middle somewhere, because I think there's gonna be a lot of others that are darker, so it's gonna end up moving around. But that's number one. Let's move on to the next one. Noodler's Zhivago. All right, so this ink goes way back, had this one for a long time. It has often been cited as a go-to, how you have like blue-black inks? Well, this is known as sort of like a green-black ink. It's very, very dark, so I'm excited to get to swab this one up, especially next to all these other ones. A lot of these inks, I've used them, before, but I've never, used them side by side with a bunch of other, colors in the same range. So this is as much experience as I have in this kind of world. This is still kind of a new discovery thing for me, which is really, this is part of what makes it so fun. All right, so Noodlers. How do I spell Zhivago? Let's see here. Zhivago. Fun little tidbit here. My wife's father, my father-in-law, really loves Dr. Zhivago. Great movie. First time Rachel and I watched it, this was back in the days of the DVD Netflix days. It's a long movie, so it actually arrived to us in 2 DVDs. I put the wrong DVD in first, so we started out watching the movie in the middle. But you know, it was like an older movie, and it was like, you know, the credit, they don't do the credits the same way. So we were thinking, as we were watching it, we were like, oh, this is kind of weird. I guess they're just kind of like, you know, easing into it. The credits will come up at some point, but then they just kind of never did. They didn't really set up the characters. They're just kind of already in it. And we were like, man, this is so confusing. But the whole thing's like sort of a mystery anyway. And then we're like an hour into it, and then it rolls the end credits, and we're like, I think we did this wrong. So not related to ink at all, but because the name Zhivago brings up that memory for me. And another fun fact, I also have never gone back and rewatched it. So that was like at least 15 years ago. No, more than that, probably 17 years ago. Yeah, that's the only time I've seen Dr. Zhivago. Was like I kind of self-Tarantino'd that movie. So it's kind of fun, but yeah, wow, look how dark that is. So even Sherwood green being pretty dark, Zhivago is like, is that even green? It looks basically black, but if you're looking for like a green-black ink, I mean, Zhivago, it's already looking pretty good. It's probably gonna darken up even more as it dries. And I will say Sherwood, now that it's darkened up a little bit, granted, I'm putting the ink on pretty heavy. This is very ink-resistant paper. It's got a little bit of a sheen to it, just a little bit. So that's nice. You're not gonna get that on most papers, so it's not like a sheening bomb. We have some others that are gonna sheen heavier, which is why I'm excited to go with those. But this is obviously darker than Sherwood green, so I'm gonna put that one right there for now, and then we'll go to the next one. Robert Oster, River of Fire. All right, so I just created my own segue here for heavy sheeners. River of Fire is a heavy sheener. That's kind of what it's known for. A nice dark green with a pretty strong red sheen. So I'm curious how it's gonna sheen compared to some of these other inks that maybe like aren't necessarily designed for it as much, and how much that's going to actually affect the green color that comes through when you throw that red on there. So I'm very eager to see how that goes. So let's take a look here. Robert Oster. Ooh, wow, this is really coming off wet on the glass pen, which honestly is good for the purpose of finding sheen. River of Fire here. Whoops. Okay. That's going down pretty dark, I will say. Definitely going down darker than Sherwood green. I don't know, it's pretty dark like Zhivago. I'm kind of curious how this is gonna actually turn out, especially with the swab. So let's take a look. Okay, the swab is not as dark as Zhivago, which is good. So, you know, with a really heavy saturated, like broad pen, you know, you probably won't maybe distinguish itself that much from Zhivago. But I can tell it is gonna be a little darker than Sherwood green. So nice kind of in between there. And then of course the sheen is going to come out. I know it's got a red sheen. It's gonna take a minute for it to show up. So I'm gonna go ahead and place it between Zhivago and Sherwood green. And then as it dries, you'll see that sheen come out a little bit more. So slide that over, slide that up, and on to number 4. Private Reserve Infinity Pine Green. All right, Infinity Pine Green. I'm finding that I'm pulling Private Reserve Infinity inks not on an irregular basis. There's not that many of them, but for a lot of these dark ink colors, this ends up kind of showing up. So, you know, just looking at the swab, this definitely looks very dark. I've not personally used this ink before, so this is a bit new to me. You know, we like swab them and we do all that stuff here, but I haven't like actually inked it up in a pen before. So I can't really speak to its flow properties or anything. But I will say the Infinity, the reason they call it Infinity is because it's got extended time that it won't dry out in your pen, basically. So if you have a pen that doesn't seal as well, or you just aren't in the habit of writing, you know, putting your cap back on as much, the Infinity inks can be really good for that. So let me write this really long name, Private Reserve Infinity Pine Green. That's not too bad. It's not too long of a name. I got it on 2 lines, so that's something. We'll see if I have any that are going to go longer than 2 lines. I don't know. I got a Ferris wheel press coming up. That one's always a long one. All right, so let's give it a swab. I will say, you know, for a like a not drying out ink, you would typically associate that with like being really wet, but River of Fire really came off the glass pen especially way wetter. So that's really interesting. It's so fascinating sometimes to see how the different properties of the ink kind of behave, because, you know, typically we try to say like, oh, this is a dry or a wet ink, but there's dryness in terms of like how it behaves in the pen and how it feels there, and also dryness in terms of like how quickly it dries on the paper. And it's not always directly correlated, which is interesting. So there's obviously some kind of, you know, surface tension or the surfactants or whatever that's in there that can have an impact on both of those, but it's not always like one for one. All right, so this is nice. Definitely like a more kind of true green. With River of Fire, I can see a lot more blue coming out of that. And Sherwood green, I'm seeing a little hint of blue too. Zhivago is friggin' dark. Look at that. I mean, I kind of knew that because I've used this ink a bunch before, but still, that's really dark. So where does Infinity Pine Green fall in here? It's kind of hard to tell. I feel like it's, I don't know. I feel like it's gonna not be darker than River Fire. It is a different shade though, and I really like this shade actually. I'm gonna put it right here next to Sherwood Green. We're gonna see if it stays there once it dries, but that's a decent spot. All right, number 5, LAMY Crystal Peridot. So this is an ink I have used before. The LAMY crystal inks in general are more saturated than LAMY's regular line of ink. So I'm a big fan of pretty much the whole LAMY crystal line. You get this cool bottle. It's different than the regular bottle. Whoops, I grabbed 2 swabs. Let's put one back. So LAMY Crystal Peridot. Whoops, supposed to make that all caps. Forgive me. Branding. I didn't know if you knew that. LAMY, with their branding, just like Lego, is supposed to be in all cap letters. So let me see if I can stretch it. Oh boy, that looks terrible. Whatever. You get what you get. All right, LAMY Crystal Peridot. Oh my gosh, this swab is atrocious. That's okay. I'm human, y'all. Not everybody's got the best handwriting all the time. All right, River of Fire now. I can see the red sheen coming through. Honestly, it's not as much of a sheen monster as I was expecting. So that's kind of interesting. It kind of has almost as much sheen as like Sherwood green. That's kind of surprising to me. So I don't know what to make of that, but it's a little bit different shade though, which is kind of nice. All right, Peridot. Oh, it's interesting. This is like, it seems like this would be kind of more of a shader because it's not just like coming out one straight dark color. So that's kind of interesting. So we'll see what that does there. Okay. This one, you know, doesn't have as much probably yellow to it as the Infinity Pine Green. Not as much blue as River of Fire. Kind of similar to Sherwood Green. And I'm kind of keeping an eye on it to see maybe how quickly it dries. It does seem like the dry time is a bit on the long side. So not a scientific thing, this is kind of an observation. So where is this one gonna fall in terms of its darkness? It's a good question. I feel like this is gonna be lighter than all of these. And now that the Infinity Pine Green is drying more, I believe that this is gonna move up. I'm gonna put it right here. River of Fire may move down. This PR is pretty dark. And then Peridot, I think, is gonna end up going maybe last, but we'll see how that dries. That's half the list. Let's go number 6. Diamine Holly. All right, so I got another Diamine ink here. Bottle looks completely different than this one because this is one that came out of their ink vent. It was originally one of the 25 in a past ink vent. They brought it back as its own bottle, which is kind of cool. And then when they do that, they have these really cool looking bottles. So that's pretty fun right off the bat. This is another one that is a green that I know that has a red sheen to it. So I'm very curious how the red sheen is gonna show up compared to these other ones, because honestly, I haven't seen like a green sheen monster at this point. So let's start out by writing out the name. Diamine Holly. Oh, that looks like a K. Holly, there we go. Sorry, y'all, man, I'm just like not on my game in terms of my cursive today. but that's okay. We're just trying to get an idea of the color, right? Man, that Zhivago is dark. Holy moly. Every time I look at it, I'm like, feel like I'm staring into like a black hole. This is kind of crazy. A slightly green black hole. Is that a thing? No, it's not. Okay. Otherwise it'd be a green hole or a dark green hole, whatever. What am I talking about? Okay. Swabbing up Holly here. Interesting. So yeah, I can see it's got some blue to it. It's not quite as yellow as I guess maybe was picturing in my head. I haven't used this ink in a pen. No reason why. It's a really good ink. We just haven't gotten to it yet. That's a very pleasant color, I will say. It definitely seems like it's like a more vibrant green, right? Which I really dig. Ooh, this one's gonna sheen. It's already sheening. The sheen's already coming out on those edges there. I can see it in the letters. I do think this sheen is gonna be strong. It's hard to tell how dark this one's gonna end up at this point. So I may just kind of tack it onto the end here because the brighter vibrant color I think may make it end up looking a little brighter, but yeah, we'll see where it ends up. And as this is drying, I'm gonna move River of Fire because I think Infinity Pine Green is actually ending up darker. Still not totally dry yet. I still got a little spot on Zhivago that's not dry either, so if you put it on real heavy like this on Tomoe River paper, it may take a minute to dry, but there we go, that's 6, let's go to 7. Ferris Wheel Press, Cloak, and Forest. All right, we got a Ferris Wheel Press ink here, the only one in the collection. This is a shimmer ink, and bottle's been sitting for a minute, so the shimmer is all kind of settled down in the bottle, down at the bottom, so I'm gonna just kind of shake it back and forth a little bit, just so you can see that the shimmer is all in suspension, so we'll get the most of that shimmer kind of around in the ink when we go to swab it here. And I also realized when I arranged these things, I was like anticipating that there'd be another one here, but Zhivago's not going anywhere. I'll leave it there for now, but I might have to do some rearranging here for the sake of the framing of the video. Okay, so this one here, little 20 ml bottle. Now, the only problem with these, they put a lot of their coolest inks in these 20 ml bottles. The opening is tiny. Tiny. It's gonna be okay for a glass pen and for all this, but most pens are not fitting in here. So that's a little bit of pain, but that's okay. We're gonna see if the ink itself makes it worth the fuss. All right, so here we go, Ferris Wheel Press. Cloak and Forest. I will say, in just kind of looking through the bottle, it looks like I see a lot of blue. I thought this was like a very dark green ink, and it is looking that way on the paper, but it's just interesting to me how kind of blue it looks like in the neck of the bottle. Very fascinating. But really all that matters is how it shows up on the page. So there we go. Give this thing a swabity-doo. Oh yeah, it's definitely got kind of a tint of blue. Actually, I forgot. Before I swab the whole thing, let me give it another shake. Let's see how much of this shimmer settled out. Not too much, but definitely some. If I give it a little bit more of a shake, then that's gonna get all that shimmer back in suspension. And I can see the sheen coming out in this Holly for sure now as it's drying, which looks pretty cool. I thought River of Fire would be the monster sheener. Looks like Holly is kicking its butt. But we'll see once they all completely dry. Oh, this is a very interesting color. This is like kind of more of a teal almost. I wasn't quite expecting that. So we'll see what happens. That, you know, some of that might be just the shimmer that's in there because it is kind of a blue shimmer. But once it dries on the page, I'm very curious to see how much of the prominence of the green shows up versus the shimmer. Now, may need to do a little rearranging here as we go. I feel like Holly is darker maybe than some of these. Oh, it's hard to tell. With the red sheen makes it not look darker, but the ink itself is pretty dark. And then Cloak and Forest is getting pretty dark too. Oh, and it's got that shimmer that's coming out. Oh, I like that. That is very interesting. Okay, I'm gonna move Holly up. Oh, this is hard. River of Fire, it's like a different color tone. I feel like Holly needs to be up here, maybe. I don't know. And then Cloak and Forest is seeming pretty dark too. I'm gonna put this up here. That's kind of surprising, maybe. And then let's see here. Peridot, River of Fire. I don't know. River of Fire is, dust my eyes deceive me? Let's see. Sherwood green. No, I feel like Sherwood is lighter. Sherwood's probably the lightest at this point, which is kind of surprising. Well, I did say at the beginning that I think it was on the lighter end, so maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Peridot I think is maybe a little darker. Okay. Again, this isn't like ranking how good they are. I'm just trying to go by color tone, but it's tripping me out here. Anyway, let's go with that, and let's go to the next ink. Sailor Shikiori Suberakashi. All right, so Sailor keeps you guessing with this one. If you don't read Japanese, then it just says Shikiori on the front, so you have to know that it's Suberakashi. This, I think, is gonna be a very dark ink. I'm anticipating that based on how it was looking with our swab. I have yet to use this one IRL myself, so I'm looking forward to this. So I'll crack it open. No crazy properties on this one, it's just super dark. Look at that, and even the lid. This looks black in the bottle. So let's see if that continues to look that dark as we put it on the page. Okay, Sailor. Ooh, it just feels like it's flowing very nicely off this pen. Sailor Shikiori Suberakashi. We're gonna see how good my memory is getting that spelling right. Am I gonna double check it? Not at this moment. I feel pretty confident that that's how it's spelled. If I'm wrong, blast me in the comments. All right, it's looking pretty dark. It looks like this has more of a yellow tone to it. Like, not as much of the blue. Not quite olive, but, you know, flirting on the line of more of an olive kind of range, I guess. When I think of olive, I think like very, very yellow. This is just a not at all blue. Yeah, that is pretty freaking dark. I think this one is going to be either number 1 or number 2 based on what I'm seeing here so far. Is this going to beat out Zhivago? Is this a dark horse? Kind of literally? Not literally. This is a really dark ink. I don't know. I'm going to put it up here as number 2 for Zhivago, but we're going to see how that dries. Very nice looking color though. Very kind of different than the rest of them. I'm digging it. Zhivago doesn't have as much yellow to it, so depending on maybe if you like that yellow kind of tinge, maybe these two would be good if you want a super, super dark green. All right, we got 2 to go. Let's check them out. Jacques Herbin, Vert, Forêt. Good old Jacques Herbin. Now, Vert Empire was previously their darkest green ink, and that was like, for those that really like the Jacques Herbin ink, very nice inks, very easy to clean, very smooth. Vert Empire for a long, long time has been kind of like a good go-to dark green in this brand, but they just came out with this Vert Forêt, I think, not even a year ago. I'm not 100% sure about that date. I didn't look it up, but it's relatively recent, and I don't have as much experience with it myself, so we'll get to experience this together. All right, so Jacques Herbin. It's not going down as wet as any of the rest of these, which is really interesting. This is a nice green. I don't think this one is like very known or as popular, and it's got the little boop boop. That little accent there. I forget what that accent is called. I took 2 years of French and don't remember any of it. Unfortunately, foreign languages are not a gift of mine. And let's swab this up. It's looking fairly dark just in the pen. Ooh, it's a nice green. Okay. Yeah, I like this. I like this. This is kind of like more in like the Sherwood green territory here, with maybe a bit more yellow to it, actually. Interesting. I'm getting like little bubbles here as I'm going back and forth. That's really interesting. I don't know why it's doing that. I'm swabbing it the same as I have all the others, but it must just be something in terms of the, you know, specific like ink property or something like that. As far as I know, it's really well behaved in a regular pen. It's just kind of interesting. It's going to look the same, but it's just, yeah, it's got these little air bubbles. That's weird. Okay. That is interesting. This is definitely, I think, the most vibrant green, like the brightest green, which is interesting. Where is this going to fall in terms of darkness? I don't know. It might be kind of towards the end of the list, maybe because of the vibrancy. So I'll put that there for the moment. Now this is hard because Cloak and Forest, boy, you got some red sheen in here. You got the shimmer. I feel like the green is really dark, but the shimmer is lightening it up a bit. I'm going to leave it there for now, but I may decide to move it. Holly is definitely the sheening monster of the bunch, it seems. And we got 1 ink to go, then we'll do the full shebang. Noodler's Squeteague. Now I know that this one is going to be probably the bluest of the bunch. This is kind of flirts more in the teal range. I knew that this ink was going to be very different, but it's long been somewhat of an underrated, but somewhat of also kind of a popular color. So I thought it was interesting to show it, and I wanted to see it personally compared to these other greens. So let's check it out. How do I spell this thing? Let's see here. S-Q-U-E-T-E-A-G-U-E. Now, Squeteague, is that how it's pronounced? Squeteague? No, I don't think so. I think it's Squeteague. If I'm wrong, let me know, but I believe that's how it is. Okay. Looks pretty good so far, very dark. I anticipate, again, like a heavy blue tone coming out. Yep, it's got some blue. Oh, this is a very pleasant color. Very different than some of the others, but still dark. I still think it very much qualifies. I feel, you know, in self-reflection here, I feel pretty good so far about my color selections. I feel like I stuck to a pretty good range. Props to Janaea for helping me narrow down this list. Props to Rachel for helping me narrow it down further. It's a team effort here, but ultimately I'm the one in front of the camera and I got to stand by it. So y'all get to blast me about it if you think I did something wrong. Okay, very nice color. It's actually not quite as blue as I was even thinking. You know, River of Fire actually looks bluer. That's kind of surprising to me, but I'm gonna wait to see how it dries completely. In terms of darkness, you know, Vert Forêt has actually gotten a bit darker, which is nice. It really darkened up quite a bit. I think I might actually put it up here. Squeteague though, gosh, that's pretty dark. I think Sherwood green might actually be our lightest of the bunch. Hashtag called it. Peridot versus Squeteague. They actually don't look that different from each other, really. I feel like Squeteague is shaping up to be darker. Is it darker than Vert Forêt? I don't know. Maybe. I'm going to leave these for a hot second. I'm going to let them dry completely, and then I'll give you my final assessment and talk about what I like and give some superlatives.
A few minutes later.
Okay, we've given it a few minutes here. Not 100% dry everywhere, but the main spots are dry everywhere. It's really interesting to see the properties that have come out as they've dried. Now granted, very ink resistant paper, very heavy amount of ink. I feel really good about Zhivago being #1. It holds. I've long said that that's like basically the darkest green kind of black you can get. And even looking at it with the rest of these, that completely holds true. So very cool ink, very unique. I dig that. Suberakashi, as it's dried, has really kind of yellowed. Like it actually has gotten brighter, which is weird. You don't typically get that with most inks. It's like, it seems like it's got a darkness at its base, but then it's got like almost a bit of a sheen to it that's lightening it up. So I think I might have to move this down. It's really tough to tell. It kind of depends on the light, how the light hits it too. But I don't think I can, in good conscience, make it #2. Pine green, pretty dark, a little bit of red sheen here, which is nice. So that's really kind of cool too. Holly, oh, Holly's tough because it's got that red sheen. I feel like that is lightening it up. You know, so again, it's not a ranking per se, but I actually think maybe Suberakashi could go here, #3. But I think Vert Forêt may actually move it up a bit for me because it doesn't have the sheen or the shimmer. I think that is actually helping. Cloak and Forest, I might knock down a peg or two because that shimmer that's coming out is really prominent and really lightens it up, and just the base ink color has really gotten kind of lighter too. So I think Squeteague maybe is next. Peridot is pretty darn close, a little bit different color, but it also has some decent sheen. Cloak and Forest, oh gosh, I think River of Fire might Might end up being darker than Cloak and Forest. Oh gosh, getting everything out of order here. River of Fire, then maybe Cloak and Forest, and then Sherwood Green. Does that seem about right? Yeah, I think I might go with this for the rankings here. So some superlatives here. Let's see here. One that I think would probably be the best shader. Let's go with shader. Just based on how I've written here, it's hard to say because I don't think any of them are going to be phenomenal shaders. But the Crystal Peridot maybe is based on the swab, maybe. So I'm going to say that. I don't feel 100% confident about it, but let's go with that. Darkest one, obviously, here is Zhivago. One that's the heaviest sheener is Diamine Holly, which kind of surprised me a little bit. Not so much, but and Vert Foré's got a little bit of sheen to it too. How about that? Yeah, so, and then my favorite overall, just completely subjectively, I think it's kind of tough because they're all very different and I really dig them. My favorite, I don't know. I think maybe Vert Forêt. I really like Zhivago, but Vert Forêt, I'm going to ink this up in a pen because I have not tried that one yet, but I really, really like that color. So that one I'll kind of tentatively pick as maybe my favorite of the bunch. But let me know what you think, you know. Again, this is really just kind of see them all compared to each other. You can see even with a pretty narrow range of colors, you still get a lot of different properties and a lot of different color leanings. This is what I love about fountain pen ink is you get all these intricate little different nuances to their properties, and it's always something fun to discover. So that's my dark green ink. I hope you like this video. You can check out samples of all these colors, as well as bottles of them over at gouletpens.com, and also all kinds of other fountain pen, ink, paper, all your needs there for fountain pen stuff. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. Spend time with you, and right on.